Special Sauce Podcast. You like the song? The sauce is good, huh?
This is startup finance Kratom custom and let 'em lead.
With your host, Marcus Aurelius.
Welcome back to Special Sauce Podcast. This is your host, Marcus Aurelius. We're back again, my good sauce boss audience out there. This particular show is brought to you by Corso and Catone, the Patriots fans' #1 sports show. Our sponsor, Immortal Seats. Immortal Seats, of course, we had Mike Sorkin on. He is busy, even though we're talking about this coronavirus and everything else. He is still busy. He's still booking tickets. So remember, Immortal Seats, making memories one ticket at a time. Download the Immortal Seats app to buy seats. Today, our guest, you may recognize him. He's been on twice already. He's our longest standing guest. We used him more than our backdrop. Actually, I think Josh has been on our show more than the backdrop. But there's a good reason. He's got a book out, and we talked briefly about his book last time. But his book is out. His book. So Josh Gorra is our guest. If you haven't listened to our podcast before. His book is called Change Your Mindset, Change Your Future, 10 Daily Steps to Maximize Each Day. Thank you again, Josh, for being on the show. How you been, my man?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you, man? How's the family?
Good. Very good. And you, I know you do a lot of travel. You do a lot of things. You're like me. You're all over the place. Hopefully everything's good.
No complaints.
That's good. That's good. Same here, my man. Same here. Just keep it moving. So tell me, what's been happening with you, my friend?
Well, on the personal side, I don't know if it's been a long time since I've seen you, but talked a lot about different challenges and how you overcome different obstacles. In the last 100 days, my mom actually moved in with me, health declining and that type of thing. So on the positive note, it's been good. Bring some of the old school values into the house, and my girls appreciate it. On the business front, we've been doing a lot of events like this, a lot of podcasts, different interviews, and trying to help empower as many people as possible using the 10 principles.
So let's go through this a little bit. For the folks that don't know, your book, actually, Joe is probably going to pop it on the screen in a second. Your book is on Amazon, and it's a bestseller in the entrepreneur space as well as entrepreneur mindset. So in the mindset space for entrepreneurs, you're like number 140, which is an amazing. Remember, Amazon is global. This is in the globe. So you're getting some reach out there. So your book talks about the 10 principles. I want to go through that with my audience because this is a tough time if you're a self-employed entrepreneur who needs to make it, right? We just came out of COVID and now we're getting all this news that we're probably going back, right? How does an entrepreneur just keep focused in their mindset going so they can get through anything?
It's a great question, Marcos. I would say, we don't know what's going to come up, right? The only thing that we know is that's constant is change, right? It's consistent, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I think the best thing to do is keep gratitude top of mind. If we're thankful for what we're going through, as crazy as that sounds, because you're alive, you're breathing, you're spending time with your family, you have the ability and the obligation to provide for your family and for yourself. So if you keep that top of mind and the perspective around being thankful versus, poor me, we got to go through this, we have to shut down, whatever the case may be, you dwell on the things that are external versus internal. So I would say the biggest thing is focus on your mindset by starting by being thankful for what you do have versus what you don't have.
A lot of people talk about self-care. What is self-care? I mean, what is that? Is it different for everybody? Is everybody doing yoga out there? Because I'm not a big yoga guy. I'll be honest with you.
I've tried yoga. I tell you, it's actually phenomenal. And I
you like it, huh? My wife has gotten me to do it a couple of times. I'm not going to say I never tried it, but I'll do anything for my wife. But
agreed. I will tell you, the first couple of times it's challenging, right? Like anything else. But since the last time we spoke, I'm down 30 pounds.
Wow. Yeah, you look good.
Thank you.
Look good. We used to do that 5 a.m. club. We did that for a long time, and you look good. You kept going with it, which is awesome.
Yes, thank you. And part of that was trying different things, doing the bicycle, doing a lot of running, Bikram yoga, which is when the studio is over 100 degrees, so sweating and yoga, right? So it makes it a little more challenging, but it's all part of challenging who you are, right? So self-care is fine for me, right? Because everybody's different. But I would say that self-care is taking care of yourself first. You can't take it. There's an old quote by Jim Rohn, ROHN, the gentleman that trained.
Not the sports guy, Jim Rome, because I
No, not
listen to
that
that.
guy. But Jim Rohn, ROHN, he trained and mentored Tony Robbins and a lot of other folks. But he used to talk about, if I take care of me for you, then I'll ask you to take care of you for me, right? So take care of you first, and that way you can take care of everybody else. But self-care starts with, for me, it's exercise, it's having a routine, it's creating that way of thinking early in the morning and continue to that habit. Because if you make it a habit, it's easy, it's second nature. For me, it's 4:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday. Saturday at like 6, I get a little bit of sleep time, right? And then Sunday, I take it off. But I start the day that way every single day.
And passion is one of these things. You meet people who say, "I'm going to be a millionaire," right? And then you ask them, "What are you going to do?" "Well, I'm just going to do anything, whatever And then you put the tasks in front of them. And of course, it takes discipline, some of the other things. But do you think passion is an important part of the whole thing? I'm Italian. We're passionate about everything. If we're not saying "Rough fun novel" of 5 minutes into something and really just pushing our way through, it's not going to work. But what do you think about passion? How important is passion?
Passion is critical, man. And I'm Spanish and Italian. I got a lot of blood flowing through me, similar to you. We're passionate people, right? That's the culture.
Yeah.
Now, does everybody wake up every day and excited about what they do? I don't know. But I would challenge everybody and say, if you're not running out of bed to go to work and do what you do, then you're in the wrong space. So it ties into being passionate, right? Like, bring passion to what you're doing. Be excited about what you're doing, because if you're not, it shows. Right.
Yeah.
And so you can tell, like, when we talk about how we help other entrepreneurs and help people and families, et cetera, it drives me. And you've known me long enough, you can tell. And I've seen a lot of progress of different people I've coached and organizations I've helped with their sales teams or, coaching folks, training folks, because it starts with how much passion you bring to the table. If we start a conversation and we end down, right, how excited are you to call me back? Right?
Not at all. I always start with, I only do well coaching PhDs, and a lot of people are shaking their heads like, "I'm not a PhD. What am I doing here?" Right. And I say, poor, hungry, and driven people, right? Because, and that's really what it is. The passion comes from the hunger.
It does.
You got to be passionate about something enough to understand the little nuances. It's the little nuances that make you dangerous in any business.
It
Even
is.
sports, right?
And if you look at motivation and inspiration, right? Everybody talks up. You hear a lot of these quotes and different things.
Yeah.
It sounds good, but if you look at the root of the word, right? The root of motivation is motive, right? The Latin, the root of the word. What's the motive? What gets you out of bed? What motivates you? And if you look at what inspires you, it could be external, internal. But if there's no passion, it doesn't matter.
No one's really motivated by the checks. I mean, every people are like, "Oh, the checks I get, it's great." But what are you doing with that, right? Like, giving back is a motivation for some people, right? Isn't giving back pretty important? I mean, how important is that to have a well-roundedness to you and to give back?
So giving back. So talked about, challenging yourself, right? But giving back. So I try to tie in goals. For me, it's one of my core values, right? It comes down to beliefs and values. In July, I did over 100 miles for St. Jude. I raised over $500 as a non, raising money for awareness, right? But it ties into giving back. So how can I maximize the time? How can I utilize the 10 principles that I believe in and also make it about somebody else? If you do enough for everybody else, eventually the world, the universe gives you what you want. And not because you expect it, it's because you're giving back. It's organically coming from you. If you do.
Yeah, and you know what? I've seen that in people's lives. I've seen a lot of people that are in trauma type situations. They'll run into a time where they'll actually, feel like they need to shut out the world, right? And that happens to some people out there. What advice do you have to those people who are in that trauma based type situation? I've had people say some serious things. They lost somebody from COVID. All kinds of things are happening in people's lives. How can trauma-based people tune into this thing too?
Man, that's a valuable piece of information, right? So, like, everybody wants to know, how do I rewire the brain? My advice to anybody that's lost anybody, and I've been fortunate, right? My mom turned 76 last month. We thought we were going to lose her in February due to different reasons. So I feel for everybody that's lost a loved one, especially a parent or a child during COVID or whatever it is. But my advice would be this. I mean, I put myself in that position, in that place, because I've had to, help people in my personal, professional life that did lose somebody. I would say that you have to look at it from a perspective of state of mind, right? So what's the worst that can happen, right? What would that person want for me? What would that person want for you? And it comes in, if you think about it, if you really love that person, your parent loved you, whatever it is, they would want you to keep going. They want you to keep pushing. You didn't come this far to only come this far, right?
Important, like knowing that someone still sees you, that this spirit and your generation. I mean, we have the ties because we're both children of immigrants. You have that tie to the other generations. You realize the sacrifice, but not everybody has that fortune. Like, so someone, how do they really understand? How do people really understand out there how important that is to give, to give back and trust in the process, and just understanding that all of this emotional, like a lot of, especially with my veterans that I counsel all the time, there's situations that they've seen that I wish that on nobody. You know what I mean? I don't know how they bounce back from the stuff they've seen. So a lot of people are kind of struggling out there, and is gratitude the way to like frame their lives and to go forward? Because I've kind of understood that a little bit from you reading your book too. But what kind of exercises can they do for gratitude?
Gratitude is easier than it looks, but everybody complicates it, right? And it's tough and it's hard to do daily. What I recommend is using a journal. A journal, keep it by your bed, right? I keep it right by my nightstand. So when I wake up in the morning before working out, I jot down a couple notes. And usually it's two people I'm thankful for, right? I challenge myself to give back, to think outside myself, to live past myself, and say, who are two people that have really been good to me? Like, I'm thankful for who they are, what they've done for me, right? It can't be the same people, because that's easy. And then it's also two experiences from the day before. So two people that, an experience that I had the day before, and two people I'm thankful for. And I write it down. And then I write down some goals I have for the day. But now I've already reframed the way I think. So doing that, and also empowering everybody around you, right? Because it's contagious either way.
It is. It motivates sales teams. It motivates your workforce. It motivates. I mean, it motivates even your family. I mean, when you're motivated, it shines through every portion of your life. You mentioned circle of influence in your book. I'm glad that you tie in circle of influence. I get a lot of questions from young folks that find it hard to crack a circle of influence, and they're really thinking about whatever business they're in. They tell them to go and talk to doctors, to lawyers, to CPAs, right? Uh, Tell me more about how a young person should look at and frame the circle of influence. Is it always so important to get people who are high level influencers, or are there some folks that you can call your circle of influence that give you just enough support to really get you going? Like, what should people look for, especially when they're early in a business? What kind of things should they look for in a circle of influence?
I know for me, I look for someone that's, always doing either equal as me or better than me.
Yeah.
And then by being part of nonprofit, it also provides perspective, right? So I'm the treasurer for a nonprofit organization called the House of Hope, where the goal is ending homelessness, right? But I do a lot of those things to give back, right? Trust the process and be thankful for where I'm at in life, but also thinking about what else can I do to challenge the way I think, to evolve, to grow. What else can I do? Right. So those are all part of those things, and they work in a sequence. So it's not like one thing you can point to, Marco, but it's a series of events.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because it doesn't just happen overnight, and it takes a while to pull it all together.
It
Um,
does. And also, to add to that, so the circle of influence, you always want to surround yourself with successful people, but I don't mean just financially. People always think, well, I have to be with I have to hang out with millionaires to become a millionaire. Yes, that's true, but it's also not true, because just because someone's a millionaire doesn't mean they're successful personally.
Oh, that's right. It's,
You know,
and a lot of times they start off, with 6 home runs before they even take the field. They get a very wealthy family, a lot of connections, and they end up being a bust out because they have no drive.
and
And
here's the thing, right? Well, there's that, right? But it's also, how did they get there? Did they inherit it? Was it handed to them? Did they get lucky, or did they really work their tail off? And usually, it's one of each. So if you surround yourself with people that got lucky, how are you? You're hoping you get lucky.
you never get ahead. So,
But if you surround yourself with people that are hardworking,
yeah.
Regardless of the business they're in, but they're good to people, they're good to the community, they're good to their family, they take care of themselves, then they've created some type of legacy, then that's something you want to model. You know, it's a lot. If you want to win the race, you model the best runner. If you want to model some type of, right? I mean, that's how it works.
Yeah, it's always the way it works. And you know, the PhD thing applies to that. The poor, hungry, driven folks. There used to be a thing called Horatio Alger. It was like a society that they created of people who pull themselves up from the bootstraps. There's an old saying for you too, right? Someone who pulled themselves up from the bootstraps, right? So if you visualize that, that's probably the hardest thing you could ever do. So, but there are people out there who have seen a lot of adversity. Finding a mentor is more about finding the person that you feel has created a life for themselves that you want to emulate. But it's not just the car, the glitz, the gold. This is where things get lost on the internet. You see all of these ads run. You know, you and I have known people that are in the investment business that they put these ads out there like they're so successful. And we really have been around a long time. And you really know after a while, like who's really just, you know, putting it out there just to get a good message or who's really doing the business. And it's in any business, it's like that. You know, I don't, you know, I don't care who you are, but you know who's doing the business. So what I got to say is that even in our own industry, like I have always found that people in your own industry, you think they're competition, but the ones who are the A players, the top people, they don't view you as competition. So never be afraid to take someone in your own business, as crazy as it sounds, right? Someone in your business that doesn't work with you, that competes with you, and make them a mentor of you.
And be the so one of the principles I follow and coach on, right? Be a mentor and be a mentee, right? Like inspire somebody and be inspired. And so there's a big difference between being inspired and you inspiring somebody else, right? So I agree with you. I think, you know, if you're a realtor, go find, you know, 3 realtors that are very successful, both personally and professionally, and model that behavior.
Yeah.
But if you look at 3 different successful people, the single mom with the successful business, right? They're going to do very well. They're going to do it differently than a man that's married with 3 kids, or, you know, a single dad, or whatever the case is. But you can pick apart, pick and choose different things, and then create your own style.
Pick what works for you. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one thing I this week I had a meeting with a guy. Perfect example. Guy came from Ireland, became a citizen last year. Okay, came from Ireland, has a hard Irish accent, but a lot of fun to hang out with. I love hearing him talk. You know what I mean? It's you feel like you're writing a movie, right? One of the Mark Wahlberg movies or something. So the guy, great guy, but he's in film, and he's done work for like the Duck Dynasty people, Ice Road Truckers, all these shows, and he's been behind the camera, and now he's gotten more into production. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, how did you do that?" He goes, "I picked the one production company that made the leap from being behind the camera to actually producing. And I called them and I said to them, hey, I'll work for free. I'll fly from where I am. He happens to live right near the airport, so he can just jump on a plane. He's not married, no kids. And he did that a couple of times. When they were in a pinch, they called him. They said, okay, here's your chance. You know, get on a plane, meet us down the Caribbean. We got a filming event kind of thing, and we can use your work. And they didn't pay him. They fed him. They gave him a hotel room, whatever the hell it was, but they didn't pay him. They liked him so much that they gave him a production sliver. So now when he produces a show, he gets a percentage of the show. So like Duck Dynasty was a $820 million in royalties show. So he got like 1/4%, whatever the hell it was, something small, but guess what? It translated into a lot of money. So yeah, so yeah, I mean, somebody like that, make your own opportunity. You know, if you have to work for free and you can do it, do it. You know what I mean? Like really just throw yourself into stuff, right? I mean, you and I throw ourselves into everything, right?
But it's also part of giving back, right? Going back to that principle, when I write a book in English, it's for the majority, right? But when I write a book in Spanish, because I'm passionate about it and I want to provide financial literacy, I want to provide a process that someone can follow. It's because I'm giving back. I want to help people and give somebody a blueprint that I didn't have, that my parents didn't have, that your parents didn't have, right? So it's nice to have something. Go, oh my God, why spend 5 years trying to figure it out when you could spend 5 days, read the book and figure it out?
So that's a great segue for the Latinx community. You have en español, right? Hold up the book, show them the book. Look at this.
Yes, sir.
En español, cambia la tua mentalidad, cambia tu futuro. How about that? Huh? Change your mentality and change your future. How about that? I mean, es più italiano, ma es muy parecido. What do I say? It's very similar.
Very close.
It's very close. I start speaking Italian. They still understand me though. It's pretty funny, probably because I move my hands. You know, I'm like,
yeah.
So
Cubans do the same thing.
it's
If you and I were on mute, they think we're fighting. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's I know. If we got an Italian and Spanish, mano, and I don't want to get in a fight with you. I'll tell you, you got both of them. You got, but so let's go back. So your book has a lot of very interesting things. There's one other thing that you key in on actually that I think a lot of people get lost on. You get it all over. It's trusting the process. You hear that all the time. Trust the process, right? It's like it's almost overdone, right? But tell me what that really means, like to someone, and what kind of exercises can they do to just make sure that they're going to just stay on that path.
So it's a good question, Marco. I would say that you're right, and that's why I put trust your journey, personalize it to you, because my journey is different than yours, and yours is going to be different than everybody else. When I got into financial services in 2004, I didn't know where that was going to take me, and today I own my own agency. Right? That sounds good and well, but most people weren't there in the beginning when you're just learning it and learning the process. So trusting the process means, like my grandmother used to say, stick to the knitting, stick to what you know, and perfect that craft until you get bored. When you get bored, challenge yourself again and do something else within that same circle. For me, it was creating the coaching business, and it came out at a time when most people were, suffering from obesity, anxiety, depression, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what really drove me to write the book or start the coaching business, because there's way too many talented people out there that just don't trust the process. They don't trust their own journey, and they give up too easily. They get rejected a couple times. They don't understand it takes 7 times for somebody to say no before they say yes. And it doesn't matter what sales business you're in. I coach realtors, I coach financial advisors, I coach top salespeople in car business, whatever the case is, and the same common denominator is true. So if you go if you're a realtor and which I'm not, but you go show 7 houses and the 7th one is $1 million showing, is that a bad day? I don't know. I don't think so. And you do the same process tomorrow and you perfect your language and your vocabulary and your cadence and your tone, the tonality and how you speak. The next time you do it, you might get 3 out of 7, and then you might get 5 out of 7, right? But if you're thankful for the process, you trust the process, and you continue to get better at your craft, that's trusting your journey. And that's what I mean by that. I mean, if Marco says, Josh, are you available tonight at 7? I figure it out and I'm available.
That's right.
Sometimes it's as simple as saying yes.
Yeah, that's right. And say yes to the things that scare you, right? So things that scare you only make you stronger. Like rejection to me is like nothing. I get rejected all the time. I mean, with this space, I don't get a yes every time. I have to try a little harder than most, but.
And I'll tell you what, Marco, and I give you credit because it's not easy. I know how hard it is to get guests and do different things, but you keep at it, right? And that's why you're successful. Not last year, the year before, I was asked to speak at Carnegie Hall with Martha Stewart and some other folks, Ice-T and some other people. And I just said, sure, why not? What's the worst that can happen, right? So you do a couple of speeches, eventually you get good at it. And you get confident behind your process. You learn the right words. You learn different things from different people. It is what it is, right? But you have to trust the process. If you don't,
a lot of that takes discipline, because discipline's really the key ingredient.
Yes, you have to,
process, right? You got to stay at it. Just keep at it, right? It's like, discipline is what the cement really that puts it all together, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to do those habits, the difficult habits, right? After a while, they don't get as difficult. It's a funny thing.
21 days. So it takes 21 days to create a habit, 90 days to build a lifestyle.
Yeah. So, I mean, that for coaching, that's everything. And, I always get asked this too. They're like, people, when you talk about coaching, some people have a negative connotation because they're like, hey, I tried this, I tried that, and it didn't work for me. You ever hear that? What do you say to people who say,
here's what I tell them. Here's what I tell them. I said, what do you mean? Did you try the same thing 700,000 times, or did you try something different 700,000?
That's right.
So if I drink, so I'll give an example, discipline. So around being healthy, around keeping the weight off, around getting to my goals personally, professionally, I say I got to drink a gallon of water a day, right? I didn't grab it from the sky. I read it from a book. I learned from different mentors, different coaches. If you count your macros, if you count the protein that you eat, if you track what you're doing, it becomes a routine. It becomes part of your discipline. If you go out to dinner and somebody says, I'm going to have veal parm, and you say, that looks good, but I'm going to have the salad, right? I'll have the antipasto salad. So I'll have a little bit of a cheat meal. But it's about having discipline within your own process, your own journey, and not competing with anybody else.
Yeah.
right? So that's the biggest thing. You've heard me say it a lot of times. I mean, I coach people on this mindset of you versus you. The discipline is on you. The biggest enemy and the biggest adversary, the biggest competitor you have is yourself.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about understanding that. When you understand that, you can actually just pace yourself against you. You know, there's no
For sure.
rush. There's, you know, honestly, in learning, like the lifetime learning approach is a great thing. But I do find that some people, you know, they get into the learning thing, and then to them the task and the joy comes out of the learning instead of the doing. Do you find that? I find people all the time that are like, "Oh, I took that course. Oh, I read that book. You know,
How many,
that
think
sounds
about,
great, Josh. I read that book. Jim Rohn, I read them all. That's great."
but how much do they actually implement?
Yeah, exactly. How much are you implementing in your life? You know, it's like,
Right.
you know,
And you know what else happens, Marco? There's that, but there's also the fact that when you compete against you and you have that epiphany and you experience a peak state of mind in that mindset, you literally rewire your whole brain because
yeah,
now you don't care what anybody else thinks, and nor should you. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean in a confident way about yourself, because now you're like, okay, what did I do yesterday? How do I beat today? Right? How do I get better by 1% daily?
yeah.
Compound interest, right? I mean, you improve personally, professionally, 1% every single day. You're looking pretty damn good at the end of the year.
It's Tom Brady had a list of all his favorite books, and one of his books was the Four Agreements. Have you read that one about the Toltecs and the Four Agreements? It's
I can't.
interesting.
I have not. No, I can't say I read the whole thing. I've skimmed through it, but I haven't read the whole thing.
His thing that he tunes in on, and like your word has to be impeccable. That's one of them, right? So you know, never take anything personal, right? I mean, the guy literally was called a cheater for a year. People were inflating balls and talking about all that stuff, and the guy literally went back and won the Super Bowl the next year after he was suspended. So I mean, like this is a guy who's a contemplated winner. Whatever you think of the Patriots and whatever, you got to say that the guy's a consummate winner. And one of the big things in the Four Agreements is, you know, always do your best. It sounds very cliche, right? But on some days, like Michael Jordan's another example of a sports guy too, right? He had 100 and something fever in that game 7 against Portland, right?
No,
Still
against Utah Jazz.
against Utah Jazz, poured on what, like 60 something points, like triple double numbers, and just, you know, won the championship, right? So, and these are the kind of things athletes have a little bit of a, you can easily point to them being able to just suck it up and do it, right? Whereas the average person, you know, it reminds me of like the Peyton Manning moment. I'd hate to get all sports on the cliches, but the Peyton Manning going to somebody's job and saying, "Cut that meat." You know what I mean? Like, there's not going to be anybody at your job cheering you on, but you know, but I got to say that you know, a lot of times there are clutch performances that need to happen. And where does that come from? Is it the discipline, the passion? Is it where it all comes together? Like, what is your opinion on when someone does a clutch, like even in your business, you know, what is it that, and people are going to ask you, like, what are the things that make you successful, right? There's always, people always want to know that 5 second thing, you know, they get a comedian on the street, make me laugh. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
You know, sing me the best song that, you know, they all
Yeah.
want it fast. You know what I mean? Everybody wants this fast solution, but if you really had to pinpoint, what is it?
It's for me, honestly, and that's how I came up with the book, because it wasn't one thing, you know, Mark. I wish it was, right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people I've coached and trained and developed over the last 20 years, it's never one thing. It's always a combination of many things, right? And it's a combination of what you apply. But it comes down to, if you had to pick one of all of those things, it comes down to discipline. It comes down to challenging yourself, being coachable, being approachable, right? Being held accountable and wanting to be coached, right? So like a lot of people get good at something and then they plateau, they stay where they are because they think they know everything, and they've already lost the game. They just don't know it yet. It's a matter of time, right?
We've got a close friend that I think you know him too. We've interviewed him 3 times and never wanted to use any of the interviews because none of them come off genuine. We just feel like, you know, there's just not, you know, like he talks a good game, but he's already changed like what he does like twice. He's a young man, which is, it's unfortunate, but we just find that a lot, where you find young people finding their way, and it's trusting the process, it's having the discipline, it's all the steps. Like for someone that's, I'd hate to say it, but and I think it's true actually, is that millennial, like when I was in my 20s, probably like you, I read everything I could get. And back then it was CDs in the car. I'd be in the car, go into appointments for money management or for just working as a financial advisor, and you'd be in the car, right? And you listen to, I even had cassettes. I'm dating myself here. I had CDs and cassettes. I had more CDs though, but and I always listened to all these different authors, and something I'd always try to improve something, right? So like you have a great story. Your actual book is going to be an audiobook soon. So that's a nice thing too. You're going to have an audiobook. It's in Espanol, but like how important is it for someone who's getting started to just keep listening to stuff like yours?
I would say that look, the audiobook's going to be in English, and I'm excited about all of them, but I think that one's going to be more personalized because it'll be me reading it and sharing a little insight on each chapter. It's more personalized. A lot of people have requested it, so I'm actually really pumped to get that out soon. I would say that, look, you got to be patient. You got to be compassionate with yourself in the process. You can't compare yourself with a 20-year veteran in any business.
No.
If you're starting right now, you have one bad week and you're like, oh, I'm a failure, I want to change it. It doesn't work that way. Give yourself some time. Be compassionate with yourself in the process. Stop living with the Joneses, trying to compare yourself, or trying to keep up with the Joneses or Kardashians or whoever's on TV poisoning people's minds. In my opinion, if you like them, good for you.
Gary V.
Right.
That's a good one.
Gary V. Everybody likes somebody, and that's okay, right? But stop comparing yourself to all these other people. How about you? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the power we all have. You're unique. You're individual. Like be who you are. If you're authentic, authenticity is going to override any competition. If you're who you are, no one's going to compete with you. They can't compete with you. How can they compete with me? You're going to get up at 4:30 in the morning? Not many will. 5 days a week. Not many will, right? Like I'm one of those guys. Like Will Smith had a really good quote, and it always stuck with me. If we're on a treadmill and I'm running against you, I'm either gonna die, or I'm gonna run at 12 until I beat you.
There you go.
I ain't gonna lose, right? I'm gonna keep trying.
Never lose with that kind of drive. And that's why we always bring you in for the drive segment here. But and the special sauce is about that. I mean, that's why did we name it the special sauce? We had 2 other names. If you listen to the last podcast, we went over, Joe and I kind of did a recap of all the episodes when we talked about you. You know what I mean? We talked about you behind your back. I'm telling you now, okay? All right. I know you're gonna want to kick my ass after, but listen to the podcast. I'm sure you probably tune in anyway. I know a lot of your people do. But we talked about kind of, why we named it special sauce. And that's because people would always ask, hey, like to business owners I work with, they're like, what made you so successful? How did you get this thing done? I mean, say I got people 2-3 years in business that have done phenomenal numbers, and people are always like, oh, how did you do it? How did you do it? What's the secret ingredient? What's the special sauce? So I'm like thinking, hey, special sauce. I'm like, here it is. Right. So I've asked you before, and I'm going to ask you this in the context of people out there, how do they get to the point where they know they've got their special sauce? What does it take for someone to realize they have a special sauce? What is the thing they should be striving for?
I would say evolving by going through breakdown or breakthrough. See, most people go through breakthroughs and don't even realize it. Small victories are breakthroughs, but they don't look at them. They don't pay attention to them, right? They think, oh, I lost a pound. It's like, kicking a chair off the Titanic. It doesn't mean anything, right? But it's not true. It does. And if you lost a pound every other day, right, you're on your way, but you have to celebrate small victories, and you got to keep track of what you're doing, right? So breakdowns are good too, because if you lost somebody, you significant other, it didn't work out, you separate, or you see your kids every other weekend. A lot of the parents in sales that I work with, they struggle with this. Like, how do I make time for my kids? And I tell them all the same thing. I said, look, whether you spend an hour or 5 hours, it's the quality of time you spend with them, right? So get off the cell phone, get off the phone, get off social media, whatever it is, and focus on them when you're with them, right? And that's just one example, but I would say breakthroughs, breakdowns, and evolving. Be willing to evolve. If you're the same person at 40 that you were at 20, shame on you. You lost a lot of time.
That's a very good one. I like that. If you're playing video games in your basement, there's a problem at 40. I gotta say, you know, I was on. We have a friend who has a really nice boat. By the way, big shout out to my friend Rich. He was on the show here. Rich Coelho, great home builder. We're Right Build Homes. They're doing wonderful things.
Yeah, beautiful job.
Built this gorgeous house on the pond there on Johnson's Pond in Coventry. So we were out on the boat and we're talking and I don't want to mention the guy's name, but he's got this friend. Of course, we all have these friends, right? That said to him, "Oh, look at you! You know, you got this. You're doing this. Oh, it must be nice." And I looked at him. I said,
Well, that must be nice.
"It must be nice."
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean must be nice? I'm like, the guy kills himself, right? Like he works hard, he deserves it, right? So, but there's that attitude out there. And you know what? Those are the friends that are not in the circle of influence, right? If there was for me as a coach, as a mentor, if you ever told me you had anybody in your circle that's like that, I would tell you that you need to axe them, right? Axe your bottom two friends every year. I think that's for
Yeah.
me. It's more actually because my wife and I tell my wife, I look at my wife when we go out and I say, "Don't make any new friends." She says the same to me. We just like, you know, where we go, we meet people. So
I think quality over quantity all day long with friendships.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people I cut out every year because you in order to evolve, you can't be anchored. You can't be anchored by certain people, certain negativity, right? I joke and tell people all the time I coach with, I work with, my friends, my family, be so positive that the negative people remove themselves.
yeah, that's good. I like that.
Right? Because you don't have to do anything. It's not confrontational. Right? We joke and say it's carefrontational. They take out themselves, right? It is what it is. But it's not, and I would say in the overall scheme of things, too many entrepreneurs focus on how many times they fail, how many times they fall. It's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get back up.
That's
And
right.
when you do get back up, what did you learn from the experience? Like, you write it down so you don't have to do it again. No one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, but it's what you do with and how you change from it, how you grow from it.
And mentoring and journaling helps you overcome those. Like instead of making the mistakes yourself, learning it from a mentor before you're about to make this mistake is so much worth more money. I mean, having a good coach that makes you journal and you showing it to the coach and the coach realizing that you're headed down this path and making a couple of subtle changes matters more than anything else. You know, we lived in Bristol, Rhode Island, one of the sailing capitals of the world, right? We have a guy who has circumnavigated the globe. People go to him all the time about how do you sail, you know, solo sailing for like days around the globe, right? Imagine one little tiny fraction of a wrong direction and how much longer is it going to take or what's going to happen to a person like that, right? So this is the kind of stuff that we don't realize. I mean, in our lives, we don't have that kind of a dramatic, but you know what? You can easily piss through money in the early stages of business too, making the wrong steps. How many people buy software, buy an LLC? People always ask me about the LLC before they have the business plan. And I tell them, look, there's nothing wrong with being a DBA, starting off with nothing, right? When you actually have assets, that's when you start the LLC. You don't have to worry about, you know, they want to tell me, who do I go to for that? I'm like, that's not the question you ask an advisor. Like more of the questions I want are the interactive, you know, how am I going to sell my product? Where is it going to appear? You know, what is my margin going to look like? You know, what's accretive to cash flow? What kind of debt should I be taking on? You know, how am I going to raise more capital? Why do you need more capital? Well, I got purchase orders. I love that one. Right. I just got that the other day. The guy's like, well, I meant to tell you this sooner. You know, I wanted to talk about this, and this, but I have like 6 purchase orders and I'm calling all these banks and nobody's really responding. What do I do? I'm like, when are they dated? When are they going to be executed by? He was like, oh, well, next week at a handshake. And I'm like, all right, that's it. Stop. Right. Pick up the phone, call a few people. And he got way further with a couple phone calls from a mentor than he did from just calling people cold. Because if you're coming off the street to a banker, they're not going to want to see you. You don't have a business plan, you have napkin scratchings and a couple of POs. It's not really going to work, you know. So you got to sit with a professional, and that's where you come in with realtors and salespeople, mentors, business owners. So what's your favorite group? What group have you had the most transformative success with? What group of people?
I would say, bar none, financial services professionals and realtors, because they're very similar in the sense, and I hate to make comparisons, but they're very similar in the sense that we're in the service business, right? I mean, we're both selling commodities if you really think about it, but at the end of the day, I think that the mindset is similar, right? And it's helping them focus on being transformational, not transactional.
Yeah,
That's my and because their day is different every day, that's why I enjoy being around the most because I like to it makes selfishly, it makes me better. Right. So here's the magic piece. Like everybody says, well, thank you for sharing time with me. I said, listen, the magic and the mystery, right? The magic is we're both going to share ideas and learn from each other. Right. The mystery is why doesn't everybody do it?
exactly. Exactly. And iron sharpens iron too. That's another one of these things you learn.
Yeah.
You know, surround yourself with people that'll grow with you and you basically bounce stuff off each other and you just get sharper. So my man, we're getting towards the end here of the podcast. I appreciate you coming on. Tell
Sure.
us, what are you up to next? What's going on in Josh Gorra's world?
I'm having time and I'm enjoying my little girls. They're going to be 6 and 4 soon. You know, I got the audiobook coming out soon. We're expanding into different areas. I'm working on different groups. I'm working on some digital platforms or learning systems to have the curriculum online so that people can access it all over the world. A lot of cool things coming down the pike.
All right, my man, continued success. You're also going to be at the Network of Influence conference. That is with Manny Lopez and Les Brown. So that's an
Yes.
event that you're going to be at. We just posted it online. So it's
Thank you.
August 10th and 11th.
Next week.
Yeah, so it's next week, and you can get your tickets online at www.networkofinfluence.com. You get to hear from Josh Gorra and hear some of the mindset stuff that's going to help you be a great success and to overcome some of the things daily that, suck your time and just, make your day suck. He can actually turn it around where you can maximize each day. How about that? So thank you for being on, my friend. Always a pleasure. And you mentioned courses. That's a good transition. We are right now working on our Kajabi page. If you're not familiar with Kajabi, Kajabi has 53 million global active users. So people take classes all the time on Kajabi. The great feedback we get from that platform, and I've taken many courses there myself, is that it's interactive, it's affordable, and there's a lot of different opinions. So you don't only have white paper, college educated experts that are going to talk, in circles and you're going to be confused. You're going to have practical, streetwise, applicable knowledge that'll help you continue the process, get stronger with the process, and create the discipline that will get success. So also our recipe book is coming on to our website. So we will have a landing page as of this week with our recipe book, which is a special sauce recipe book. It's the 5 ingredients to building your own awesome sauce. So having your own sauce in your business. So how do you get your sauce right? There's 5 things. So Josh has 10. I've only got 5. I cut it down. So our 5 things are ethics, of course, journaling and mentoring, knowing your numbers, right? That's the Shark Tank thing, right? Knowing your numbers. You got to know your numbers, right? And then it's continually having a mentor in the process. So that's the other one. And the other part too, that if you get it, we've got an extra thing in there, and time management. That's the one that most people avoid. So time management's a big piece of it. And then the 5th one is sales. I know a lot of millennials that I talk to are like, oh, I don't like to sell. Selling dirty, selling this, selling that. This is what you hear online because people tell you that the internet's going to bring you prospects that are going to buy stuff on their own. And I can tell you from experience, that doesn't happen too often. Here's why. The cost per acquisition of a client has gone through the roof on all these social media channels. And there's a lot of people in your very space. So if you don't know sales, you will suffer because you need to sell it to investors. You need to sell yourself every day, and you need to sell your business. Now, there's a way to sell where you're not being abused and you're not abusing clients, that you're doing it in a consultative manner. And for that, I actually used, with permission, of course, a piece from Sandler Selling Institute, which IBM uses on its own Salesforce. So check out our recipe book. It is free for the first 500 listeners. So check out our book. It's our recipe book, and you can make your own awesome sauce. Thank you again, Josh. You've been great. Thanks for being on the Special Sauce. And
Thank you.
remember, folks, tune in here on our website, specialsaucepodcast.com. Check out our social media. Hit us up on Facebook. We're on Instagram under special.sauce.podcast, and you can get us on LinkedIn also. We're streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube right now, as well as a couple other places. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. Remember, folks, go slow, take chances, and be prosperous. Check us out.
It's the Special Sauce Podcast. You liking the song? The sauce is good, huh?
This is start off as finance. Crane custom,